It should show. There we go. Hello.
Yes.
I'm always, yeah, the live, we are live. We are live. Um, for those tuning in, my name is Laura Lee and I'm the Young Parents Director, and I am here with Katie. Katie is our discipleship coordinator and has faith conversations. She's like a pastor and faith and spirituality conversations. So,
Hmm.
Katie, thanks for
Yeah,
being
thank you.
here
I'm
tonight.
happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you.
Thank you.
Tonight, for those who are with us, I want to make sure that you know that we'd love to hear from you. If you are tuning in, we're going to be asking some questions and we're doing our best to monitor your responses and see what you're saying as well. We can just talk between me and Katie, but we'd love to hear from you. Um, I'm playing three different parts here, so if it's a little bit amateur and we don't know what we're doing, just please have grace for us. We just appreciate that you've tuned in. Tonight, we're going to be talking about turning points in our life, because this is a theme for our year for young parents. So the first question is, Katie, do you want to take a stab at it? What is a turning point?
I think a turning point is a time in our lives when something is going to change, or something is changing, or maybe a decision needs to be made, or we come up against something that causes us to have to go. I don't think it's always something that we want, but it's something that causes us to have to go in a different direction, or something that brings about a change, whether small or big. Sometimes it's small, but sometimes it's big, significant things in our lives. Yeah.
Well done.
Oh,
That
thanks.
that about covers it. Yeah, and I think what's really important and what I hear from you is this idea that it's not always something we anticipate or
Mhm.
something that's good, but it can lead us in a different direction. And often, as we relate to turning points, that's a beneficial direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Ultimately,
So
often. Yeah. Yeah.
hopefully,
Yeah.
because it's a point where you're making a decision, right, about
Mhm.
where you're at. So I wanted to ask you if you can think of a turning point, and I'm also asking anyone who would be tuning in live, if you can think of a time where you had a turning point. I actually think life is made up of a lot of turning points.
Oh, yeah.
So is there anything that comes to mind for you as an
Yeah.
example of a turning point?
I can think of lots of like really big life changing things. Like, I decided, just 3 or 4 years ago, I have 3 kids, and my oldest was already in high school, and I decided to go back to school. And that was like a huge turning point to decide, um, just to do something else, even with my time, and to invest my energy and money in that was a big thing. And there were
Mhm.
definitely things stirring in me that made me want to do that. I didn't necessarily know where it was going, and there were turning points within it as well. But that
Yeah.
was a big one for me to decide. I know I'm not old, but later in life, to decide to go back to school and pursue a degree. So that was a big turning point for me, for sure, and recent,
Can I can
relatively recent.
Can I ask a couple questions? Maybe just
Of
one, but
course.
maybe
Yeah.
two. I like to ask
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
Um, why did, like, at what point did you decide that? Was there a moment of discomfort? You were just feeling like you needed a change? Like, what led to making the decision?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm somebody who tends to not always know what I'm feeling, but I start to just get um uncomfortable. I don't know if uncomfortable is the right word. Just I start to feel off, almost moody, like when I know there's something stirring. Like I find it harder to regulate my emotions, honestly. And I, for a while, had thought about, oh, this might be something that, and I went back for biblical studies. So, um, just for
Okay.
context, but that's something that I'd been interested in and thought, oh, wouldn't it be great if I could do that? Years before I'd thought about that. And then it almost like started to get too uncomfortable, or too uncomfortable to
Mhm.
ignore anymore. And so it forced me to kind of think, is this actually an option, and to go there. So that for me is one where there's like I guess a discontent almost in
Okay.
what I was doing yeah, I just need there. It felt like there was something missing, and it sometimes takes me a while personally to land on what it is that's causing that discomfort, but
Yeah.
I figured out through. Anyway, that might be another one of your questions.
Well, I'm curious because I think it's really good for us to understand how we even know we're at a turning point. And I think
Mhm.
I'm hearing restlessness, I'm
Yeah.
hearing like a lack of direction, and maybe you even under some pressure, but it was unknown to you.
Mhm.
Um, I know I can think of an example, but I can particularly think of one as a young mom where I was feeling very isolated and alone. And the
Mm.
loneliness that I was feeling
Yeah. Yeah.
actually helped me go, I have to do something differently.
Yeah.
And I had to step out of my comfort zone to connect with other people. I found that really
Mhm.
difficult. I wanted people to come to me,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, but I had to make the choice that I had to do something differently.
Yeah.
So,
I think sometimes too,
yeah.
there comes a point where the discomfort of what is causing it, like your loneliness, for example, you're on this side, I'm getting used to
I
that.
know.
Your loneliness became more uncomfortable than the thought of going out to meet other people. So, like, I think
Yes.
that often happens where to make the turn and the change is also uncomfortable or daunting or scary or whatever those feelings may be. But it's almost like the discomfort of what's causing you to change has to be strong enough to push you into that unknown and uncomfortable part that brings the change about. Because usually
Yeah.
change is not easy.
No, we often don't do it of our own free will.
No. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then how did you figure out what you wanted to do? How did you know?
So some of it was just interest that I had had all along, but then I started to talk to other people and even just start to clue into things that had been going on. Like you sort of clue
Mhm.
into clues, I guess, that have been happening. So I had had other experiences where people had asked me if I would ever consider doing something like that. And I sort of, for years, had brushed it off or said, oh,
Mm.
that would be, cool, but not really anything that I'm thinking about seriously. So those things all start to come back. It's like, oh, people have told me that this is something that maybe I should think about. And so a lot of it comes from people who you know and love, have some input into it. Um,
Mhm.
I live a lot inside my own head. So sometimes it's just being able to give myself the space to ruminate on what I'm
Mm.
thinking and think about how I'm feeling, like try to pinpoint what it is that I'm feeling and that. So
Yeah.
I think that's often helpful.
So I'm
Mhm.
hearing if we kind of compare it to a journey. And so if you are tuned in, I see a couple people on here with us and would love to encourage you to answer the question, have you had a turning point
Mhm.
in your life? And what was that? Share that with us. But also what I'm hearing from you, Katie, is that there's this point you're traveling on a path, maybe you feel a little lost, a little, uncomfortable and
Mhm.
stuck even, but there's like
Yeah.
signposts. There's different kinds of signposts that help you turn in a direction that's beneficial for you. So I'm hearing
Mhm.
that there could be wise guides, that there could be people on your journey or giving yourself the space to think about a pathway. So I'm just
Mhm.
curious, like, are there other signs? I don't know.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
sure
I
you can
think
come up with it.
even with the wise guides, I think sometimes there are unwise guides that act as signposts who almost like are like, why would
Like a
you go back
warning?
to school? Like, yeah, like, or no. So I'm thinking like in my situation, a lot of people are like, well, what are you going to do with that? And my answer was, I don't know. So those people generally, they're very logical, are thinking, well, then why would you do that? Like steer you in the other way. And there was like an increased discomfort when I'd have those conversations because I'm like, no, I know they're wrong. Like there's something in my gut that's saying they're
Ah,
trying to discourage me from this, but I still have feel in my gut like it's the right thing. So I think sometimes our reactions or um,
mhm.
just things that come up when people are pressing against what you actually feel you're supposed to be doing is a signpost in itself. Like when you can read the people who are trying to steer you off course and think, no, you like have an intuition that it's off, that in itself can be a signpost, if that makes sense.
That's It does make sense. It does make sense. And even to have defensive this. So there's people who can point you in the right direction, people who suggest the wrong direction, but bristle against it, or
Mhm.
that's not right in your gut. There's times. Um, and is there anything else? Like, I even think from a faith perspective, which is
Yeah.
what our program is based in, is there anything for us to consider as a signpost when we're feeling lost or stuck or don't know which way to turn?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in this particular decision and in a lot of most of my decisions, spend time in prayer. And again, I think for me, a sense of peace comes over me when I know that there's a right decision to be made. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying that that happens immediately. Like I pray and say, God, I'm thinking about going to school. Is it right? And I just get like a voice that says yes. That doesn't. That's never happened to me. It maybe has happened to other people, but I think there's like an ongoing. Um, I have an ongoing relationship with God where I start to be able to know that He really brings a peace into my spirit when I've made a decision and to know that it's right. And I think He uses the same practical guideposts and signposts that we already talked about. Like there are
Mhm.
people who He's put in my life who have affirmed my decisions and who have supported me along the way and things like that.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a really key point. He doesn't always put the writing on the wall,
yeah, yeah.
but he has ways of communicating that to us. One is people, one is through his word, which actually is a good
Hmm.
segue
Yes,
to
yeah.
our theme verse for this year for Turning Points. And that theme verse is Psalm 119, verse 59. I have considered my ways and turned my steps to your statutes. And so if we can
Mhm.
put ourselves, this is concerning us. This is, well, who is it? Who's this for? I mean, I've kind of used this to say
Yeah.
for us on our path of life and on our journey, what happens when we consider our ways and turn our steps to your statutes? Can you, Pastor Katie, explain this? Sorry.
Yeah,
I like to
yeah.
call
Actually,
things
somebody
Pastor
asked
Katie.
me about this today, so it's
Oh,
helpful.
no way.
Yeah,
Okay.
about our verse. So, because statutes, I think especially is a weird word that um, those of us who maybe are familiar with the Bible and stuff have heard it, but I have never in my normal conversational life used the word statutes, I don't think.
I used
Maybe.
to work in a law firm
Okay, so
as
you've used it.
yes, it was a very familiar, but it actually is, I consider it part of law. Um,
Yes.
and so I'm curious about what you consider it when you
Yeah, I think it could be said, I've turned my steps to your laws, but I think in a way we start to think about the Bible as being like a set of rules. And then we sort of, I think that brings us a little bit off track in terms of understanding the more relational aspect of it. So I think it's really like turning our steps toward the ways of God. And I think we only really know the ways of God when we are um, in the Bible, reading the Bible, in community with other people, talking about it, praying. Like it's a multi-dimensional thing. So this is that we think it was King David who wrote this, who had a very tumultuous life of knowing that he was going to be king and then wasn't king for a long time. He had people trying to kill him. But this whole this little verse fits into I think it's the longest chapter of the Bible, and it's actually an acrostic poem if you read it in Hebrew, which I can't do. I don't know if Laura Lee, if you can read it in
just the
Hebrew.
other day
Just
I
the other
read it in
day.
Hebrew.
But it's actually the whole alphabet. So each verse is like and throughout the whole thing, repeatedly what comes up is the ways of God, the laws, and how good they are. And I think rooted in this is knowing that the ways of God is good
Mhm,
for us and
mhm,
that He
mhm,
longs to see us flourish and to live a life of purpose and that one that we were created to do. And so when we consider our ways, I don't know, maybe other people are different, but I look at when the many times that I've just kind of done my own thing and it often doesn't turn out, and then I think
mhm,
about turning my steps to the ways of God. And I can see in my own life when I have done that, his faithfulness and how it has played out. And so I think that's why this verse is so helpful when we're thinking about turning points, because it often is a point of all right, I've been doing this my way and it's not working. And so how
Mm,
can I tune in? What are the ways of God in this particular situation? Who can I talk to? What, can I be praying? What do I need to be doing to even know what the ways of God are in these situations? So yeah.
yeah, and it feels like an invitation to me. I mean, it feels like an invitation that David
Hmm.
took,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
there was something on offer for him, a new
Hmm.
way of doing things or a better way of doing things. When we talk, when you mention all that about God's law or his desires for us that are beneficial
Hmm.
to us. And so this was, thousands of years ago. Do you think it applies to us today?
Absolutely, I do. From my own experience, I would say yes, for sure, that it does. Yeah, I can see the way that God has worked in my life when I have um, considered my ways and turned my steps to His instead. And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I
And I
think
think as our Creator God, it stays the same. Like He made me just like He made David, even though David was thousands of years ago, and He knows what's best for me and all of that. So yeah.
yeah, it's interesting because I think when I felt my most lost, and still, if I'm feeling
Mhm.
lost or discouraged, so we'll get into this in future lives. I know our time is running out here, but this idea that sometimes how our state of our heart is really um, kind of waving a flag to say, pay attention, you're
Yeah,
lost, or
yeah,
you need help.
yeah.
And so those moments I know are moments where it's an invitation for me to turn to what God wants for me, that
Mhm.
maybe I've been off the path. And so look, we've got a hi friends from
Hi.
somebody that I'll just
Hello, Facebook user.
Facebook user. Hi friend, presumably you're a friend.
Yeah.
And thanks for tuning into this. So we'll leave that
Mhm.
with you, whoever watches this live or will watch it later.
Mhm.
We want you to know that invitation is for you too,
Yeah.
that God desires the best for you. And
Mhm.
he's inviting you into relationship with him and to walk a new path. And that's really what Turning Point means. So
Yeah.
we talk about this at our groups. You can go to, here's my little blurb, youngparents.ca. If you want to register for one of our young parent support groups, that's for pregnant and parenting youth ages 15 to 25. We're now in our weekly groups running
Mhm.
across Toronto. Katie and I are going to be doing lives to cover some of this as well. So we would welcome you to tune in. I keep saying turn because we're doing Turning Point. Tune in or tune out. But turn is the point. Anyway,
Mhm.
anything to add before we close here, Katie?
Yeah, I don't think so, but yeah, just again an invitation to group, and then note also that we offer one-on-one mentorship, just generally, but also for faith-based stuff. If this is something that you
Mhm.
have questions about and want to explore, I would love to. You can talk to your own young parents leader, just to have those conversations about faith, and know that you don't have to know anything coming into those. And you also don't really have to be in a place of wanting it. I don't know if that makes sense, but sometimes you might have questions and almost feel some hostility or something. I still
Ah,
welcome those conversations, and um, I expect us to have grace for each other in those, but still, I think it's important when you have questions to have a safe place to ask them. So I would love to be that for you as well.
that's an excellent point. Yes,
Mhm.
and yeah, I put up the email address if you want to. Of course, you can contact us through wherever you are watching this. And I also extend that invitation. If you're feeling stuck or if you're feeling
Mhm.
lost, perhaps this is a turning point for you. And we wanted to invite you to consider what God might be saying to you, what the signpost is to turn you to a new path. And
Mhm.
I think that's it. So thank you for joining us. And thank you, Katie, for
Yeah, thank you.
taking my questions.
Of course.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye.